What's up, drinkers? Welcome back to Have a Drink, Solve a Case. It's been a while. This week, we're going to cover the case of Sherri Rasmussen, who was murdered in 1986. It's going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. It's a solved case, but I think you will find this very interesting. But first, let's crack open a drink. There we go. On February 24th, 1986, a man named John Rutan returned home to his Los Angeles condominium to find his new wife, Sherri Rasmussen, dead on their living room floor. Sherri had been in a battle for her life. She was beaten, had a bite mark on the inside of her left arm, and had been finished off by 3 up-close gunshot wounds to her chest. The furniture was turned over. Some of their electronic equipment, such as a VCR and stereo, was stacked neatly at the top of the steps, and there was a fair amount of blood on the floor. Sherri left a bloody palm print on the wall near the panic button of her state-of-the-art alarm system. The lead detective, Lyle Mayer, used his brilliant intuition to surmise that this was an example of a botched break-in that was interrupted by Sherri. This, he believed, led to her murder. There had been a few break-ins in the neighborhood by a pair of burglars, so there was some logic to his deduction. Still, the electronic equipment was not actually stolen. There was a jewelry box that wasn't open. The only items that were missing was the BMW John had bought Sherri as an engagement gift and their marriage certificate. Wait, what? They stole her wedding certificate? Obviously something else was going on, right? The detective must have wondered if Sherri had an enemy, a stalker, or a rival that wanted that piece of paper, right? No, actually no. This didn't seem odd to him. It was the marriage certificate burglars who committed this crime. Actually, her purse was missing but was found outside, and the BMW was found with the keys in its ignition about a week later. The only other main suspicion the cops had was the husband, but his alibi checked out, and he was definitely in love with his wife. So, back to the burglars for Detective Mayer. Sherri Rasmussen was a striking woman in many ways. She was very attractive, quite athletic, and stood over 6 feet tall. You knew it when she walked into her room. And she was smart. Very smart. She attended Loma Linda University, pursuing a career in critical care nursing. She was 16 years old when she was a freshman. This woman was very capable. At the time of the murder, Sherri was still in her 20s and was the director of nursing at Glendale Adventist Medical Center. She seemed to be going places.
John was pretty smart too. He was like a mechanical engineer with a degree from UCLA. He was even taller than Sherri, and they made us for a striking couple. John took the murder very hard. He resigned from his job to move out of the city, and he showed little interest in the investigation, preferring to start his life over somewhere else. Sherri's dad was not inclined to leave. He thirsted for justice. Nels Rasmussen wasn't going to let anything go. Nels did not like the cops' working theory. He told Mayer to investigate a former girlfriend of John's that had been bothering Sherri. Even John's claims to have mentioned the former girlfriend of the investigator. They weren't exactly interested in the alternative theory. They were busy people. The ex-girlfriend was named Stephanie Lazarus. She lived in the same dormitory as John, and they had been friends in common, or they've had friends in common. They were both into athletics, and they became close friends. As a matter of fact, she became close with his entire family. They were good friends. At some time, after graduation from college, they became friends with benefits. John never saw her as a girlfriend, but he didn't mind occasionally hooking up with her. Friends and family thought their friendship blurred lines a little bit too much, but whatever. At some point, Stephanie threw John a surprise 25th birthday party. This is when she found out about his engagement to Sherri. It hadn't occurred to him to mention it to her. Stephanie was heartbroken. Apparently, she was in love with John and didn't want to be just friends. She even wrote a letter to his mother telling her of her feelings for the woman's son and her sadness that things were changing. Stephanie visited John at his condo and told her of her feelings. John told her he was marrying Stephanie. John was willing to sleep with Stephanie to give her closure. Sherri would later find out about this generous act John was willing to perform for his friend. She was not happy at all about it. They were able to work things out and got married anyway. After John moved into Sherri's apartment, Stephanie showed up in tight workout clothes and asked him to wax her skis. Sherri was taken aback and asked John to tell her to go. Instead, he told her he would do it. As a matter of fact, he seemed to think it was silly that Sherri was upset.
Stephanie showed up a few days later to pick up the skis. John wasn't there. Stephanie was wearing her work outfit. The outfit included a badge and a .38 caliber handgun. Stephanie Lazarus was a Los Angeles police officer. Nels told Detective Meyer that Sherri hadn't told John about Stephanie's behavior because she knew they would fight about it. She assumed it would blow over. Detective Meyer, relying on his years of experience, brushed Nels off and pursued the burglar theory until the case grew cold and he moved on to other obvious crimes to screw up. Nels would not give up. He contacted the police regularly, always asking about the policewoman. In the early 90s, Nels offered to pay for DNA testing of the saliva found in the bite, hair, and blood samples. He was told that he watched too much television. In the meantime, John had moved on and even briefly hooked up with Stephanie on a fun trip to Hawaii. Before embarking on the vacation, he contacted Meyer to make sure that Stephanie wasn't a suspect in the murder. Meyer assured him that she was not. Still, most people who harbored suspicions like that wouldn't go away with Stephanie, would they? It seems weird. In 2004, a criminologist named Jennifer Francis took an interest in the case. Much of the evidence was missing, having been checked out by a detective. Jennifer thought the bite swab might have been at a coroner's office, and after a lengthy search, a package was found labeled Rasmussen. The swab was in the package, and Jennifer ran the DNA. There was no match for the DNA, but it was determined that the assailant was female, contradicting Detective Meyer's theory. More time went by, and now it was 2009. Crime was down in the city, and 2 cold case investigators were given the case. Detectives Jim Nuttall and Pete Barba went through the notes and the evidence that had disappeared and quickly dismissed the burglar theory. That was very difficult. They looked at a woman who had worked with Sherri and had argued with her. The detectives found a DNA sample belonging to the woman, and it was not a match. Then their attention turned to Stephanie, who was now a detective in the art division, which was a big deal.
The police found 8 witnesses who were present when Stephanie had showed up at Sherri's office that day in 1986. Many remembered Sherri talking about the woman dressed as a man following her. Stephanie's records were still on file, and she did not go to work on the day of the murder. 13 days after the murder, Stephanie reported her backup weapon, a .38 caliber handgun, missing. She made this report to a neighboring police department, not to the Los Angeles Police Department. Stephanie Lazarus was nicknamed Stephanie Spazarus by the other officers because she was known to have a quick temper, something else that was probably known in 1986. Stephanie was followed and was spotted throwing a cup and a straw away while shopping at Costco. The cup was retrieved by officers. The DNA on the cup was a match to the saliva in the bite. Stephanie was asked to speak to detectives about one of her cases downstairs in lockup. She was lured there because she would have to surrender her weapon before entering, and she was a Spazarus. The videotape of the interrogation is worth watching. Stephanie barely seems to remember John, but later talked all about him. She couldn't remember if she had ever met Sherri. She was surprised that people were pointing fingers at her. She refused to give a DNA sample, not knowing that they already had one. She was told she could leave, and she got up to either head over to the nearest lawyer's office or book it to the Mexican border. Instead, they arrested her. In March of 2012, Stephanie Lazarus was convicted of the crime of murder and was given 27 years in prison. John spoke from the heart when the victims were allowed to make statements. He spoke of his late wife lovingly and remembered how his heart felt, still feels, whenever he saw her. He blamed himself for letting Stephanie find her way into Sherri's life. Meyer and other detectives don't recall anyone mentioning the policewoman ex-girlfriend and don't know where the missing evidence could have gone. Sherri Rasmussen was going to accomplish a lot in her life. She was a truly special person.
No.
Yeah. Well, let me see. Let me ask you. You said you dated John. How long did you guys date?
I mean, what, are you guys, is this something I mean, you said I was going to interview somebody about art, and how, what year is it now? 2009? I mean, I graduated in 82. 82, yeah. Um, you know, we dated. I dated other guys. I'm sure he dated other girls.
Well, let me ask you, roughly how long would you would you say you guys dated?
Oh, jeez. I couldn't even say. I mean, I started school there in 78. I started UCLA in 1978. I graduated in 82. I don't even remember what year he graduated, if it was a year or two before me.
Okay.
I think he was a little bit older than I was. I mean, you know, I can't remember if he was born, let's see, I'm born in 1960. I don't know if he was born in 58 or 59. I mean, you know, I mean, I knew his parents, I knew his sister, his brother went to Northridge. You know, his sister spent the night at my house before. Obviously, I spent the night at his house before. He probably spent the night at my house before. You know, yeah, I don't.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, because from what you're telling me, is you guys dated while you were in college together, right?
Yeah, and probably after college. I can't. Geez, trying to think when I met my husband. I met my husband in, when did I meet Scott? Let's see.
All right, so we have a few questions. We have 3 questions. How did the initial investigators botch the case, and did they cover for her, or were they just that bad? Zach, what do you think?
They were just that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't think it was intentional, or?
No, because the other people picked up the case and they immediately figured it out, but the other cops seemed like they were really struggling.
They were stuck in their theory.
They were, yeah.
What do you think, Colby?
I think it was a healthy mix of both. I think what's the name, Myers. I think he didn't think that one of his police officers would do that, and then I don't think that they had enough, I don't know, intelligence to think that she would have done it, or maybe they were too stubborn and they just didn't feel like going away from their theory.
I think you're both right. I think
that they were just 100% correct, and that it couldn't have been.
Yeah, I think this guy just there had been a couple of robberies in that town, right? Oh no, actually that right nearby, and they this brilliant guy just assumed it was the same guys. And when anybody brought up the policewoman ex-girlfriend, I don't think he was willing to listen to it. He just wouldn't believe that it was one of his own. It was a big mistake, and I think I'm not calling the guy a liar, but I'm saying if he doesn't remember people mentioning the ex-girlfriend,
even though the dad called every
day. Yeah, I find that very.
Hey, can you check out this woman? Hey,
I find that very hard to believe.
We didn't get any record of anyone speaking of that woman.
Yeah, so I think it was just a terrible investigation. I think it could have been solved very easily. In a way, I think it's good that he didn't, because they didn't have the DNA technology that they have today. So.
Also, it wasn't a very difficult case.
Right. I mean, they were able to get her with the DNA, so she's in jail now. But before, maybe she would have won if they, just on circumstantial stuff.
And then the next question was, what about John Rutan? How much blame do we assign to this guy? I mean, I think, he was having an affair on his girlfriend throughout a healthy amount of their relationship. I mean, we talked earlier, and didn't you say they were friends with benefits while they were dating, or?
It's all kind of unclear, but my guess would be. Yeah.
And then he did it again. That way he could.
As a favor
bury
to her.
the hatchet.
As a favor to her.
I mean, it's his fault that he got this. Well, one, this girl's obviously crazy.
Yeah, he brought.
2, he didn't listen to his wife when she said this is weird, right? And he said, "Okay, can we please make her go?" And then he went out with her after his wife died. So I think a lot of the blame is on him for introducing them. And
yeah, he brought her into their life. He had her over to the house when she's wearing all this sexy stuff, and and he felt like Mr. Stud. He thought, oh, look at me, all these women love me. That's exactly what this guy was thinking, and he should have he knew she was crazy. Hey, take a look at her. She's got crazy eyes. Do not trust that woman. You see that video of her, when she's talking, and making up all the crazy stories. And that is one crazy looking woman. You do not introduce her to your wife and just screw everything up like that. He just, I give him. I don't blame him that the woman did it, but I do blame him for bringing her into life. He should have brought that relationship to a stop, instead of leading her on. And that's exactly what he was doing. He was leading her on. What do you think?
Well, I don't even think he thought it was her.
Well, he mentioned her, and then when he went on their fun vacation to Hawaii, he called up the cops and said, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to go on this vacation with this girl. Do you think she killed my ex-wife?" "No, we don't." "Okay, then I'm going to take her."
I think if my wife was murdered, I would be like, "Can you check out my ex?"
Yeah, but would you go on a vacation with somebody you had like even the slightest suspicion? No, I would not. This guy was I don't know if I'm allowed to say douchebag, so I'm not going to say it, but this guy was just a creep. What do you think?
More of the story. Don't cheat on your wife.
Right. Rules I live by. All right, Zach, what's the number 3 question?
What would have happened if the father had given up?
I think it would have been solved eventually with DNA, but I think it would have taken a little bit longer.
I think eventually some cold case people would have picked up the case at some point.
I think we might not know just how badly the original cops had screwed up, if not for the father, because the father was very vocal. But I think if the cops had just showed up 20 years later and gone by the book,
they were assigned the case, so I think it was bound to be solved.
And they were like outsiders. They were new to the force, I guess. So
any bias that they had,
right? They didn't have they didn't know Stephanie, although most people did. But they were actually like across the hall from her or something like that. So they were nearby her. But if it had been somebody that knew her, maybe they wouldn't have looked into her. Who knows? But her father, I think he did the Lord's work. He did his daughter.
He tried his best.
He did his daughter proud, and the husband certainly did. He just skipped town after that and woohoo, boo-hoo, my wife died. So we're all in agreement that the cops pretty much botched his case, and normally we're pretty much rah police guys, right? I mean, I know.
All these videos when we're like, these cops did horrible things.
Well, I know that the FBI is still a little ticked off as for the DB Cooper thing, but other than that, I think we have a good relationship with the law enforcement, and we love law enforcement. But the Los Angeles police department definitely did not do a very good job. Thank God that these young guys showed up, 20 years later and solved this case, because Sherri Rasmussen was just an amazing woman, and she would have done wonderful things, and who knows what she would have done, but she would have done some incredible stuff. She was a very, very smart woman, and you don't meet many people like her, so it's just a shame that this all happened. And we did solve this case. Well, we didn't solve it, but the case was solved, and we just wanted to bring some light to it so people knew about Sherri Rasmussen, because she deserves to be known.
Well, that's it. If you guys have any thoughts, leave them down in the comments. Any other cases you guys want us to do. And, that's it.
Thanks for joining.
Yep.
Have a drink.
Solve a case.